We're back to 2 Samuel. We've been in the New Testament for a little bit of I'm getting some feedback here. We've been in the New Testament for Easter, obviously, and the week before Easter. And so I'll have to remind you probably a little bit about where we're at in 2 Samuel 21. But 2 Samuel 20 was pretty brutal. There was a person named Sheba who lost their whole body. His whole body was cut off, and just the head was thrown over the wall, if you remember that. It's a nicer way of saying decapitation, I think. And it was because there was a rebellion. And Sheba was not necessarily leading it. He was just saying, don't follow King David. Just go to your own home. Do your own thing. Let's not listen to King David. And it didn't end well for him. Now we're going to have something from the past, not even David's past, but from the past, come back and hurt the reign of David. Now, I don't know if you've ever done something and then thought about, why did I do that? I kind of have those moments a lot. I am a more careful teacher these days because I used to joke all the time if there was something that was nasty that someone picked up off the floor, like a clump of hair and stuff, I would say, as a joke, I'd say, $5 if you eat that, And I was sitting in class and I see this nasty spider crawling up the wall. It was big. And I'm like, oh, spider. And the person sitting against the wall looks back. And I say, $5 if you eat it. Right? And he goes, whap! And he eats it. Instantly out $5, but also mortified. Why? Wait, what? Why would you do that? $5. It was disgusting. His name was John, if you want to know. But it did change how I asked things because I realize that the underdeveloped brain of a teenager may be impulsive enough to eat a spider off the wall without much thinking. But I've done stuff like that. Right now, I am doing a weight loss competition, but I know why I'm doing it. It's to beat every single woman in the office. Because they're doing this weight loss competition, I'll say, I'll do it. I want to do it. And I can be really, really disciplined if there's competition involved. If I just why don't you go out and run? I'm who am I against? Nobody, just for your own sake. I was nah. But if it's your brother-in-law just ran this mile, and there's an app that says he ran this much this fast, I was dude, you are done. I'm gonna win. I want to win. And so I can be motivated that way, and that could be the reason I do things. But I remember when I was a kid, there was this open body of water in front of our house. We lived in Sherwood. It was this little thing. I built rafts and jumped in there and got covered in sewage runoff and things. And I'd come home and be that was fun. They'd be we think you're contaminated. But there had these big old tadpoles in there. And I took my BB gun down there. And I remember, pumping it up. It was a pump up BB gun. And I just aimed and shot. And I saw the back of one go white and then float to the top. And then I did it a few more times. And then I looked at what I had done, and there's just a bunch of these dead tadpoles. Why did I do? And then I had this terrible sinking feeling inside of me that was why did I do that? My dad had the same moment, honestly, that I reflect on. I was fortunate enough to have nobody watching me. It was just me, which is almost worse because it's I didn't do it to impress somebody. I just went and shot these tadpoles, no reason at all. And when I actually stopped and reflected, unfortunately stopped and reflected after I'd already done it, I was that was so stupid and mean. Like it served no, I'm not going to eat those tadpoles. And when I was at a family camp, my dad had a similar thing. I'll say really quickly because it was with the same BB gun. We were at a family camp, and we brought the BB gun out. We were shooting kind of far away, and all the little kids came and like, oh, this is cool because there's the gun. All the boys, right? And so we're shooting out there, and then way in the distance, there's a lizard stops on a rock. And for whatever reason, my dad just goes, and he's thinking like, how much you bet I could get that, He didn't say that out loud, but he just aims down, lines it up, whap! And you see the lizard go, wah, and fall onto its back and go, ooh, and start squirming, right? We remember because we all ran over, like, you got it. And then my dad pumped it a few more, and he's like, I got to put it out of its misery. And this little kid, right? I don't remember what he looks like, but I just imagine no front teeth, right? But he looks at my dad and he goes, Pastor Chuck, he was a pastor. Pastor Chuck, you killed one of God's creatures. I was young enough to know that, yeah, that's a bad look, Dad. It's a bad look. You shouldn't have done it. I bet he was thinking like, why did I do that? Just because I wanted to see if I could, Well, in the beginning of 1 Samuel 21, you'll actually see David just going about his life, and it takes the third year of a famine for him to stop and say, wait, what am I doing? Why haven't I even asked the Lord about this famine? Like, we might, in our day-to-day, have issues that, of course, we think, how do I solve this? Our instinct is towards our own abilities and our own capabilities respective to how we solve a situation. And we think, maybe, all of these things around us would just be solved if we had the right strategy. If I just thought about it in the right way, I could sort of figure this out. And now God can use your abilities, certainly. But if we just get better at having God be our first instinct, maybe it's like, God, help me see something here that I might not be seeing. Well, I'm going to read this, and then we're going to get to what can be a brutal part. This is the Old Testament, but it's pretty standard when you think about ancient societies, about how you would solve things. But also there's some real application here. Basically, the descendants of somebody who did something wrong ultimately get punished. Well, I have seen in my own life people reap the consequences of my mistakes. And it is incredibly important as Christians we recognize that our behavior and our actions do not exist in isolation such that they do not affect other people. Right? If somebody is drinking and driving and getting behind the wheel, it's not like, well, this only hurts me. No, you're going to hurt somebody else. Our decisions affect other people. My decision to be busy a lot means that my son goes to everything. And sometimes I feel badly because he'll be, hey, you're coming to this Bible study, you're coming to this thing that we have to go to, and he's 11 years old, right? And he's always around these older people. And so I have to be cognizant that even if this is good, maybe good for me, is it always good for my son? Is it good for the people around me? I have to recognize that if I choose to be really busy, what about my wife, who is my ministry, who is my passion, who is my calling? Am I being intentional and good with her? The decisions that I make are sticky, and other people get stuck to them. And same with you. And we got to recognize, and then the next part of this chapter, I'm just sort of warming you up to what we're going to read, okay? The next part of this chapter is actually, I think, really incredible. You're going to see some giants. They are the brothers of Goliath. And one of them is ready to kill David. Now, David had already killed Goliath. Now, this guy who's going to have a huge spear, weighs nearly 8 pounds, which is pretty heavy when it comes to a standard spear. He's going to go kill David, and then one of David's mighty men steps in and kills him. And what's really, really interesting here is that David wasn't just a giant slayer. In his older age, he prepared giant slayers. And as I go through ministry, I recognize that I'm not just here to give you some stuff that the Bible says. I need to equip people to do the things that I cannot do forever. And every single person in here, as you get older and mature in the faith, your calling is not just to your own life. It's to your brothers and sisters around you. It's in preparing a generation below you to do the things that you cannot do forever. And so what we see in David is what made him so powerful as a king and as a leader is that he was willing to prepare people to do the things that he couldn't do forever. So let's read. I'm going to read all of 2 Samuel chapter 21, and then I'm going to bring us back to the beginning and go through it. So 2 Samuel chapter 21. During David's reign, there was a famine for 3 consecutive years. So David inquired of the Lord. The Lord said, "It is because of Saul and his blood-stained family, because he murdered the Gibeonites." So the king summoned the Gibeonites and spoke with them. Now the Gibeonites were not descendants of Israel. They were a remnant of the Amorites. The Israelites had made a promise to them, but Saul tried to kill them because of his zeal for the people of Israel and Judah. David said to the Gibeonites, "What can I do for you? How can I make amends so that you will bless the Lord's inheritance?" The Gibeonites said to him, "We have no claim to silver or gold from Saul or from his family, nor would we be justified in putting to death anyone in Israel." David asked, "What then are you asking me to do for you?" They replied to the king, "As for this man who exterminated us and who schemed against us so that we were destroyed and left without status throughout all the borders of Israel, let 7 of his male descendants be turned over to us, and we will execute them before the Lord in Gibeah of Saul, who was the Lord's chosen one." The king replied, "I will turn them over." The king had mercy on Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, in light of the Lord's oath that had been taken between David and Jonathan, son of Saul. So the king took Armoni and Mephibosheth, the 2 sons of Aiah's daughter, Rizpah, whom she had borne to Saul, and the 5 sons of Saul's daughter, Merab, whom she had borne to Adriel, the son of Barzillai, the Meholothite. I got close. He turned them over to the Gibeonites, and they executed them on a hill before the Lord. The 7 of them died together. They were put to death during harvest time, during the first days of the beginning of the barley harvest. Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, took sackcloth and spread it out for herself on a rock. From the beginning of the harvest until the rain fell on them, she did not allow the birds of the air to feed on them by day, nor the wild animals by night. When David was told what Rizpah, daughter of Aiah's Saul's concubine, had done, he went and took the bones of Saul and of his son Jonathan from the leaders of Jabesh Gilead. They had secretly taken them from the plaza of Bethshan. It was there that Philistines publicly exposed their corpses after they had killed Saul of Gilboa. David brought the bones of Saul and Jonathan, his son, from there. They also gathered up the bones of those who had been executed. They buried the bones of Saul, his son, Jonathan, in the land of Benjamin at Zelah, in the grave of his father Kish. After they had done everything that the king had commanded, God responded to their prayers for the land. It says this, another battle was fought between the Philistines and Israel. So David went down with his soldiers and fought the Philistines. David became exhausted. He's an old man now. Now Ishbi-Benob, one of the descendants of Rapha, had a spear that weighed 300 bronze shekels. That's nearly 8 pounds. And he was armed with a new weapon. He had said that he would kill David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, came to David's aid, striking the Philistine down and killing him. Then David's men took an oath, saying, he will not go out to battle with us again. You must not extinguish the lamp of Israel. Later, there was another battle with the Philistines, this time in Gob. On that occasion, Sibbecai, the Hushathite, killed Saph, who was one of the descendants of Rapha. Yet another battle occurred with the Philistines in Gob. On that occasion, Elhanan, the son of Jair, the Bethlehemite, killed the brother of Goliath, the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. That's like 15 pounds. Yet another battle occurred in Gath. On that occasion, there was a large man who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. Thank you. If you couldn't count, they did it for you. He too was a descendant of Rapha. When he taunted Israel, Jonathan, the son of David's brother Shimeah, killed him. These 4 were the descendants of Rapha who lived in Gath. They were killed by David and his soldiers. So that's 21. A lot happening there. I want to take you to tell you first who the Gibeonites are. Because the Gibeonites, it says, were slaughtered by Saul. Now, the Gibeonites are not members of Israel. They were in the land of Canaan when Joshua was going through and claiming the promised land that God had given them. And they realized, okay, they're really strong. They just destroyed a lot of our biggest fortresses. And so they decided to do something interesting. Okay, you can read this in Joshua 9. But they pretended not to be part of the land, but just weary travelers. And so they're coming through with their wagons and their moldy bread because it's like, it's been a long time. We don't even have good food. And Joshua, seeing this, decides to say, you know what? We'll make an oath with you of peace. Since he's thinking, since you're just kind of coming through, I want you to know that we won't have any ill will. We'll make an oath of peace. And then they're like, gotcha, we live here. But you made your oath. When I talk to especially young men here at this school, and I call them to something that they ought to be doing, and they say, I will do that. I walk over to them, and I say, shake my hand. And I remind them that your word matters. And if you're going to shake my hand on this, you're committing to me that what you're saying is true. Because you should never have to make your word stronger than it already ought to be. If you're like, I promise on my mother, or I pinky promise, what you're communicating is, because my regular word isn't very strong. My regular word of just saying, I will do that, doesn't mean a whole lot. But if I promise, if I have you grab, like, what is this? Come on, that's weird, right? If we put our pinkies and we wrap them like this, then that's just the strongest way to make a promise, right? Who came up with that? I don't know. How about when you just commit to somebody and say, I will do that? Then it means something. It meant something here. The oath was something that lasted forever. But it says that Saul, in his zeal, in his passion for Judah, well, he slaughtered the Gibeonites. Now, this was not like we killed a few of them. It said that the word is a big word, like exterminated. Like, we have no standing anymore. You went through and you killed all of our probably fighting age men. You destroyed us. Like, we have nothing anymore. And now we want the penalty to be on those who participated in that in the line of Saul. So these descendants were likely those who participated in this extermination. And rather than saying every single soldier that was ever there, figure out every person. No. Saul's family, their descendants, we want them. But I want to take you back because this is interesting. How did they know that there was a problem? See, a famine is pretty typical. And you're not going to think much of it if you think that all there is nature. But the God of the universe, who made all nature, controls all things. And so if you have a famine, probably the first thing you should do is bend your knees to the God who controls it. The point I put here was when the ground refuses to give, seek the God who does. Because if you're not getting the things that you think you ought to be receiving from the ground or whatever, or life has a lot of trouble or issues, and all you ever do is think all of these are for natural reasons, and you're never going and seeking the wisdom of the Lord in these things, man, you're not following the right way. Because you need to submit to the Lord. I said here, some famines won't break until we bend our knees. Maybe there is something in your life that isn't working the way you think it ought to, and I'm going to tell you, maybe you need to bend your knee. Maybe you need to go to the throne room of God and put your face to the floor and say, God, if anyone in heaven and earth can change this, it's you. Because if you think the person who can change this is you, that's where you're getting it wrong. God's power is made perfect in our weaknesses. I am at my best when it's more God and less me. And so submitting to God and realizing that there might be famines happening in your life right now, well, don't just sit there and think there's no way that this could be spiritual. Oh, God controls everything in heaven and everything on earth and anything in between. So go to God with your problems. The famine wasn't so much a punishment, though, as it was a prompting. And I do think that God will get our attention with things in our life. Maybe things are not happening the way that we want them to happen, and that's maybe God's trying to get your attention in your life. I want the default of believers of Jesus to be, I'll seek the wisdom of the Lord first. Yeah, I mean, even if it's not things that maybe you necessarily need to spiritualize, but recognize that God ought to be part of every part of your life, right? If he's at the center, at the root, he is involved in everything in your life. Just, God, help me with this. Help me with this lesson. Help me with this preparation. Help me have the endurance to make it through this day. God, help me to see the things that I need to see. I've told you before that one of the prayers that I often do is called the prayer of examine. I do it at the end of my days. And I just pray and I invite God through my day. That means I have to go through and remember my day. What did I do starting this day? Because sometimes when I invite God to review my day with me, wow, does he see things that I don't? Wow, does he point out things to me that I maybe should have done better? And so I think to myself, you're right. I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna work on that. We need to have discipline in our life, willingness to change the prompting of God. But man, we're not going to see it if we're not inviting God into every space of our life. I would encourage you, review your day, but not just you. Review it with God in prayer. And I promise you, you will see things that you're like, whoa, I missed that. It's good for a marriage too, I can tell you that, because I miss things, right? Sometimes my wife is kind of subtle. She's getting good to put it on the nose, but I have this weird tendency to totally tune out the frequency that is my wife's voice. And I don't know why. I wish I could so she'll just say things and it will go and disappear. I don't know. And she's like, you know that I've been talking to you for 5 minutes? And I'll be like, whoa, really? I heard literally nothing. Hopefully none of you have that weird slippery brain that I have. But I'll tell you, I notice it more when I invite God to my day. It's like I'm like, wait, did I respond to that? And I'll go to my wife like, hey, you were asking, did I respond to that? She's like, no, you ignored me the whole time. I was like, I'm so sorry. Well, some problems in our life won't be solved by your strategy. It'll be solved by seeking God. And so I think David here teaches us how to be wise leaders, even though it's delayed discernment, because it took him 2 years. Like, what were you doing for 2 years, right? Where it's like, wow, this is a long time, and you're not seeking the Lord. To just be like, hey, can you, I don't know, help with the rain? Or what's going on here? But delayed discernment is better than no discernment. Delayed discernment is still wise. You're stopping, you're recognizing, because maybe some of you will have years of famine in your life in some particular instance, and maybe the time for discernment is now. Where you say, gosh, I want to bring this to the Lord and figure out what is actually happening. What are the reasons for this? See, maybe you're going through your life, you're going through motions in certain areas, and you've never stopped and asked, what am I doing? Why am I doing it this way? Because I think David had that epiphany. What am I doing? Like, we serve the Lord of the universe. I think I'm going to invite him into this problem. And then immediately he realizes it's because God has decided that Israel cannot move forward until it deals with what is in its past. And now David, again, he wasn't even the reason for this. It was Saul. But God has still called David to fix the issues of the past. This happens all the time. It's in me a little bit too, but of course I see it in kids and my son too. Whenever you see something that isn't as it should be, and you say, hey, Rogan, can you clean that up? What's his response going to be? I didn't do it. I didn't make that mess. At Costco, it would bother me so much. When I worked at Costco, if you didn't know, I worked at Costco, and now I walk too fast. That's just the thing, because you have to have the Costco walk. It's called sense of urgency at all times. They basically want you to run at all times, or just walk really fast, but then stop whenever you see garbage on the floor, and you pick it up and you throw it away. And of course, I would see someone in their cart with 48 appetizer things that they grabbed, right? And they're like, I think I'm going to just like, when the ladies have the tray of like 10 on there, they're just like, I'll take them all, wipe them into their cart. And then they just eat them and just throw them on the ground. Man, do I want to go to somebody and say, excuse me, I was going to pick this up, but I thought maybe you should. Since you make the mess, right? No, I didn't do that. I picked it up with a smile. I'll get that. Oh, you dropped that, right? To which they, I imagine, would say, actually, I threw it on the ground on purpose. That's what I think. But I need to recognize that the right thing is picking it up. It's picking it up. It's cleaning it up. And it doesn't matter, when somebody drops their books in the hallway or whatever, you don't go like, wow, you did that, so you pick it up. You help them pick it up. God is trying to train his people to do things not just for their own sake or for their own benefit, but for the benefit of the world in which God has created. The proverb is, good men will plant trees whose shade they will never sit under. Are we being people who are preparing the world for things we may never see or experience? I want to prepare young people for growth and for things that I may never get to witness. And if I'm only doing it because it will benefit me, then my motivations, whether I like it or not, are selfish. I want to do them because they're right and God has called us to. I want to plant trees whose shade I will never sit under. I want to prepare hearts where I may never see the growth, right? Paul says it this way, sometimes we will harvest things that we never sowed. Well, who sowed that? Who had the faith to sow the things they would never reap? Well, we ought to be that way. There's a famous bridge in Honduras. It's called the Choluteca Bridge. And in I think in the late 1990s, I think it was 1998, there was a hurricane called Hurricane Mitch. And this bridge was modeled after the Golden Gate Bridge. And it was a beautiful bridge. And when Hurricane Mitch came, it devastated everything around. But the bridge was still there. It stayed. Here's the problem, though. It changed the entire topography of the place so that the river, now that it went over, was now in front of it. And so you have this beautiful Golden Gate style bridge. It's one of the largest in Honduras. And it doesn't go over any water. It does nothing. And it exists there, but is useless. And when we are not intentional about seeking God in the things that we do in our life, sometimes we don't realize that the things we're doing are useless. We exist to experience and express God's glory. And there are things that we're experiencing and expressing that are not for that purpose. We are a bridge over nothing at all. We can't be that way. This is what it says in Colossians 1:15-18 of Jesus. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For all things in heaven and on earth were created in him. All things, whether visible or invisible, whether thrones or dominions, whether principalities or powers, all things were created through him and for him. He himself is before all things, and all things are held together in him. He is the head of the body, the church, as well as the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, so that he himself may become first in all things. What we do in life should be for him, for Jesus. The purpose of our lives and the things that we do should be in service to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the Alpha and the Omega. Through him and in him, all things are held together. Because if we are not examining our lives and the reason we do things, we may just be a bridge over nothing at all. I want to be God's instrument. I want to be maybe a part of God's bridge to this world that is desperate to be saved. I have a second point. One thing I wanted to say is that God doesn't exist for us, we exist for him. And you could see that David kind of realized, after 2 years, he's like, wait a minute, God doesn't serve Israel. Israel serves God. So we should go to him first because he's the king. So the moment that a famine happens, the people come to him. And the king should say, well, honestly, there's a better king than me. So you're coming to me with this problem. I should first go to the King of Kings with the problem. you will have people, especially as you get older, who look up to you. You will have people who come to you. The best advice you could teach them is to seek advice from the one who gives better advice than you. I want to teach young people that any wisdom that I could possibly have is the wisdom that the Lord has given me. And I want to teach you not how to access me, but how to access him. Because I won't be here forever, but my goodness, he will. And if you can learn how to exist in relationship with a God who answers you, a God who hears you, and a God who equips you, then that could be the best wisdom I can ever impart to you. Because you can't always ask me, but you will always be able to ask our Father in heaven. So, one of the things that David had to do in this situation was he had to go to the Gibeonites. And what he did really well. He listened. It said he went and he listened to the Gibeonites. Sometimes we can not be very good listeners. I am notoriously bad at listening when I know what is being said will call me to change. Sometimes my wife will come to me and she'll say, can we just talk about this? And then she begins to, I'm like, I'll actually physically do that. I'll go like, I'm like, and she's like, what? I'm like, I just can't right now. Why? Because that just means I have to be sad about who I am. I got to be sad about how I need to change. Can I change later? Right? Do I have to think about this right now? Because then it's going to convict me. And when I get convicted, it makes me want to change my life. And then I have to work on it. And that's exhausting. Right? So I'd rather not listen right now. Can we do it later? Well, when like my wife, can we schedule it? Right? I don't want to schedule it. By not right now, I mean like, I don't know, maybe never. Listening is incredible, but dangerous, because when you listen, actually listen, not be preparing the thing that you're going to say, right? Because you already know, I know she's saying this, so let me prepare in my head. So I'm like not really hearing you, but I'm just preparing how to not meaningfully respond to the things that you're saying, right? That happens all the time. You're preparing in your head and your heart the excuses to prevent you from actually really listening to what's being said. You don't, look, sometimes things people say you don't have to change to. You just need to be willing and prepared to change if God is using that person to speak truth to you. Now, in this case, the Gibeonites, not Israelites. He's going and listening to people who do not hold themselves accountable to the God of Israel. And he's listening to them. More interesting than that, he actually responds to them and says, I'll do that. I'll do it. Because we made a covenant promise. Israel, our people, we made a covenant promise to you. It wasn't me who made it. It was Joshua. Probably Joshua could have been a little bit more intentional about thinking about that situation. But we made a covenant of peace. And we will honor that. And he does, and these men who participated end up getting executed, and then it says the Lord responds, right? The land is sort of freed of the famine because David did what was right. He honored the word that his people had made. Now we, like I said, I think we need to be honorable people. We need to honor the word that we make. And we also need to be willing, as David was, to recognize that sometimes we cannot meaningfully move forward if we do not first go back. Sometimes we have to go revisit things in our past in order to move forward. Whenever I'm maybe having conversations with young people that are dealing with conflict and they're learning how to navigate conflict and how to deal with strained relationships, you can't just wholesale say, let's just forget everything that ever happened and start over. Because you don't have that in your brain to just, I don't even remember it. Honestly, you have to go to those spots and say, let's just talk about it. Let's work through that so that now we can move forward. We have to identify those things in the past that aren't good. Because I see people who will make a mistake, and it's not even that far in the past, and they're like, next time, I'm not going to do that. Okay, sure, but let's deal with this time you did. I lied to that person. I shouldn't have lied. Next time, I'm not going to lie. Okay, you lied to that person. Why don't you go tell them the truth then? Why don't you go tell them, hey, I lied to you. I shouldn't have lied. Maybe you don't exactly know why. Sometimes we do that. And then you admit it, and you move forward from there. You need to learn how to repent in your life, and sometimes that means going back, or maybe you have certain traumatic experiences or things that really you need to revisit in your past and talk about it and say, look, if my wife and I, maybe said some stuff during the day that wasn't good, I don't just go and say, well, I hope she just forgets about that and we cannot talk about it and move forward. Oftentimes we need to go talk about it. Maybe we need to apologize to one another, and then we can move forward. David is revisiting the past so that he can move forward in the future. I think that churches and families and nations, people, individuals, we need to get good at this. We need to get good at recognizing the stuff of the past and repenting for the things in our past. We need to be able to move forward meaningfully. And sometimes it means revisiting the past. It says this in Matthew 5:23 through 24. So then if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brother and then come and present your gift. You see that? Oh, you got something that happened a little bit ago? You don't just say, well, I'm here at the altar now, so I'll just hope that I won't do that stuff again or to get. He says, no. Go back. Fix it. Then you can come and move forward with this sacrifice. Jeremiah 6:16, this is what the Lord says, stand at the crossroads and look, ask for the ancient paths where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. All of us can look at our lives, and you might be at crossroads. You can say, what is the good way? I do like that it says the ancient ways. Here in the United States, I deal in my PhD program with a lot of people from China, and we have two diametrically opposing views on things when it comes to the world. If you put new in front of something in the United States, like new and improved, you're like, whoa, that's the one I want. I want the newest. I want that. If someone from China sees new, they say, ugh, new? It hasn't even been tested by time. I want ancient and old. So you'll go to the United States and be like, new and improved recipe. And they're like, I'm not going to try that till it's ancient and old recipe, right? Because in China it says, like, ancient tea recipe. You're like, if that's still around, that's a good recipe. Well, in this, we got to get ourselves into the mindset. Ancient is proven. God's way is proven. It is the best way, and we should be seeking that in all things. So, you can't heal what you refuse to acknowledge. And David here acknowledges that they did something wrong, and you can see that he goes and he works to change that situation. It says this in Romans 10:2-3. For I can testify that they are zealous for God, but their zeal is not in line with the truth. For ignoring the righteousness that comes from God and seeking instead to establish their own righteousness, they did not submit to God's righteousness. Misplaced passion doesn't mean that it's good. Sometimes you can be really passionate about something but be wrong. Notice that it does say Saul, in his zeal for his people, killed the Gibeonites. Your passion should be aligned with God's passion. You should always seek alignment for your desires with God's desires. because you just might be passionate about things that are not good for you. You might be passionate in a way that isn't healthy for the world. So yes, you can have zeal. Yes, you can have passion, but the Bible calls us to have zeal and passion for the Lord's will and way, and not ours, or else it becomes very selfish. But I want to get to this area where David is about to fight one of Goliath's brothers. Now, Rapha is the mother of these people. Now, I want to tell you, this is a very opinionated thing. In fact, Chris in the back is like, please say Nephilim, because he really likes that. It's in Genesis chapter 6, okay, where it says the Ben Ha-Elohim. Ben Ha-Elohim is the sons of God, right? Came and mated with the daughters of men. And there were the Nephilim. And it's it's a transliterated word, which means Nephilim is literally what it says in Hebrew, and we just put it in English so we can read it. And they were the mighty men of old, the Gibborim. So the Nephilim were the Gibborim, these mighty things, beings of old. Sometimes it's translated as giants. Well, Goliath was a big boy, and so were his brothers. One guy was giant with too many fingers and too many toes. But however you want to see that, these giants, one, remind us a little bit of David's original story in 1 Samuel 17 when he faced Goliath. Because people have wondered, why in the world did David, if you don't know the story, he got the sling and hit Goliath and then he fell down, so it crushed his skull, fell down, and then he took Goliath's swords and cut his whole body off. Cool story, because he was, a boy, he's probably 11 years old. But why did he get 5 smooth stones? Do you remember that? He grabbed 5 smooth stones. Well, if you remember, there's Goliath and Goliath's 4 brothers. My opinion is that David was ready. He knew with God he needed 1 stone. Hey, but just in case those brothers come, I got 4 more, right? Because Goliath has 4 brothers. But now in his older age, and these giants come, and it says David is exhausted. In other words, we're intended to see that David is not ready for this fight. And it says that Abishai comes and finishes him off. And then they say, David, we love you, but the way that you lead now is different. You're the lamp of Israel. We got it now. In other words, David has to step back because he has equipped people to step up. Now these men, the men that were his mighty men, his Gibborim, the men that he had prepared. So in other words, what we're intended to see is the mighty men of old that were like giants are called Gibborim, mighty men. I don't know if you know this, but David's mighty men, they're called Gibborim as well. They're mighty men. So it's really the mighty men of the Philistines and the mighty men of David. And David had prepared his people to do what he could no longer do. And a church is doing things right when it is preparing the church for the people who aren't here yet. I mean, that's part of what we do. These empty seats, are we preparing them for the people who aren't here yet? Are we preparing this church and equipping the people to do the things that others cannot do forever? This pulpit, this place is not mine forever. Am I investing in people? Am I being what Christ called us to be, fishers of men, disciple makers? The Great Commission is not the commission that I have. It's the commission that we have. Go, therefore, into all nations, right? Baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But there's a crucial phrase in there. Well, lo, I'm with you always. The phrase I was thinking of, yeah, that's a great phrase. Thank you, Mother. Not the one I was thinking of. I didn't say it. Make disciples. We are called to be disciple makers. The story that I think of, I'll say this briefly, is actually when my dad and I had to make a decision. It was really his decision to make, but we were at the airport and we were going to see family in the East Coast, and it was early in my marriage with my wife, Ashley. And airlines do weird things sometimes where they sell tickets they don't have, and so then they get too full. It's like, okay, that was cool. And so they ask people like, hey, that ticket you bought? Yeah, well, we don't have room on the plane for you. Makes sense. And so one of you will have to go on a different flight. So my dad, being the man, he's like, I'll do it. And I said, well, wait, no, I want to stay with my dad. So I'll go with him. We'll go and we'll have to catch a different flight. And they're like, here's the thing though. It's all the way across on the other side of the airport. So, okay, yeah, I mean, we have time. He's like, actually, you don't. It's 10 minutes. So you got 10 minutes. I'm like, oh, okay. So the rest of our family got onto the plane, and they're like, you've got 10 minutes to get across the airport. And so we just started running, right? And I've got my bags, and I'm running. And if you don't know, my dad is 104 years old. And so it's a little bit harder for him. He's not 104. I'm just kidding. He's very close, but we were running, and, I'm young. I'm in my 20s, and I could see that it was, my dad swims, but I don't think he runs a lot. And at the time, I was running a lot, and I could see it was harder for him. So I said, Dad, let me have one of your bags. And he gives me one of his bags. And then I say, Dad, give me your other bag. So I carry my bags and all of his bags because at this point, it was really hard for him. But my whole life, it was my dad who carried my bags. But my dad has invested in me over the years. My dad has taught me to be a man that loves the Lord. And it was probably a way bigger moment for me in my life than it probably was for him. But to carry my dad's bags when he had carried mine for so long felt really cool. And frankly, my dad had prepared me for that moment, prepared me to carry the bags that he can't carry forever. And that, for me, that was the illustration I wanted in my life. I recognized that God, when he called me to be a leader, he was calling me to be someone who prepared people to do the things I cannot do forever. We need to be invested in a generation that hopefully, because we prepared them, will change the world. And I see that in David. He got to step back because others were stepping up. He was a giant slayer, but he prepared giant slayers. And every single person has giants in their life, and we better be teaching them how to slay them, and frankly, helping those in the world slay theirs too. And so that's what I see here. I see a really incredible call for Christians. Why was David able to step back? Easy. Because he had prepared mighty men to step up. I want that for the church. I want that for us. I want every single person in faith to recognize that they don't exist in isolation, but that they are intended to be disciple makers, that they are intended to invest in the people around them, and that they are intended to prepare people to do the things that they cannot do forever. And if we do that well, truly, whether we see it or not, this world will change for Christ. So I call all of you to think about those in your life that you can invest in right now to do the things that you cannot do forever. Let me pray that. Lord, I thank you that you are the God of this world. God, I pray that there are bags we're seeing now that we could help carry. God, that we are able to change the world by being disciple makers. God, I pray that we would not just focus on our own progress, but that we would also focus on the success of those you have surrounded us with. God, I pray that we would be not just inward thinking, but we would let our inward change affect our outward circumstances, that we would have hands and feet that go into this world and seek to change it in your name, God, that we would teach others to use their hands and their feet for you and your glory. God, I just thank you that you are in control. I thank you that you have our best interests in mind. I pray that we would be people who seek you in prayer, that you would not be our second, third, fourth option. You would always be our first option. God, that we would seek your wisdom, we would seek your way, we would seek your understanding, that we would be people who recognize that what is happening in our life, God, that you have sovereign control over. So I pray that we would seek you. God, I thank you for the believers who have gone before me. God, who have prepared me and others to do the things they could not do forever. God, I pray that we would be generation builders that seek to build churches, to seek to make disciples, all in your name and for your glory. I thank you for being present here with your Holy Spirit this morning. I pray that we would have a wonderful rest of our days as we go out, God, but that we would be intentional about seeing the people around us, recognizing that the decisions we make for ourselves affect them too. And we love you in your name. Amen.